We all come out of the stars. As Ambassador Delenn in Babylon 5 said, we are star stuff. We're the universe seeking to know itself. But the suffering and the pain in the world makes us question, it makes me question, like, how is it that we have this suffering when we are all the same? We're different, but we're the same. And science fiction, like religion, it's a technology. It's a way that we can build worlds. And so I'm going to kind of delve into that today. Now, Latina UU minister Patricia Jimenez talks about how a theology of liberation works. She says there's 3 aspects of it. We need to learn what oppression looks like, and this is not always obvious. To denounce it, denunciation of oppression. And the third one is really important, annunciation. Tell the story of a different future. And when she talks about it, she's really quite clear that it doesn't matter whether that future becomes true in our lifetime, in our timeline. It's about dreaming the possibilities, because dreaming all by itself changes things, because it changes the dreamer's heart. When you tell the dream, the hearer may add something. It picks up detail. The group is converging on this dream, and it takes shape. The dream may go a different direction, opening up new dreams, new dreamers, and new possibilities. So we have this dynamic flexibility that dreaming can give us. Science fiction, fantasy, and speculative fiction is a way that we can do this dreaming. Now, as Harold shared with the story, Star Trek hit TV sets in the mid-'60s, and Nichelle Nichols broke ground as communications officer Nyota Uhura. Poet Nikki Giovanni wrote about this. She said, of all the possible voices to send into space, the voice of the Black woman was chosen. The Black woman's voice sings the best notes of which Earthlings are capable. Just think, every alien that the Enterprise encounters, who is the first person that they hear? Who represents the Earth to them? She represents us, Uhura, and that's part of Roddenberry's dream. Now, in the next generation, I call them Coke Trek and Pepsi Trek. I don't use this TOS, but when Star Trek The Next Generation was revived, Whoopi Goldberg was on that show. I don't know if you remember. And she was one of those children that ran to the TV every week to see Lieutenant Uhura. She said, there's a Black woman on TV, and she's not a maid. And she had such interest in the show that she was, can I have a bit part? Well, she becomes this very wise person, Guinan, in this iteration. Patrick Stewart was so curious. He's like, why is this movie star who got an Academy Award nomination, what is she doing? Why did she want to be on this show? And she told him, this black woman in the cast made me think, one of us must have made it. Clinton Fluker talks about science fiction, and he says, how do you decolonize a future that already doesn't have you in it? He's talking about black folks. This is how. We put the person in it. And there's like this whole, I love Afrofuturism, there's a whole strain of it. And it's black folks dreaming this future for themselves. There's also a Chicano version of it. There's as white folks, delving into this literature helps us to dream the future as seen by the particularities of the people who are speaking from their own experience. Now, I gotta say about Star Trek, it was a pretty cis-het white male dominated show. However, it is enunciating a different future. Roddenberry was writing in the midst of the Cold War and a competitive space race, and he put Americans and Russians on a crew together. We have this co-ed, multi-ethnic crew that has a biracial human Vulcan science officer. The mission is not to conquer, so we got a little bit of kind of anti-imperialism, at least in the way that they talk about it, but rather to explore and to learn. Money's on the periphery of life, used for baubles and trinkets. And there's even some first contact ethics with the Prime Directive. Now, as the universe expanded with the next generation, the Federation becomes allies with the arch enemies from Coke Trek, the Klingons, by casting Lieutenant Worf, who serves on the bridge and ultimately as security chief. And why did this happen? Gene Roddenberry wrote to Paramount and he said, I'm hearing these concerns that the show and the movies was becoming really two-dimensional with good guys and bad guys. And I want to change that. So let's have the Klingons be allies. And that's what happened. Now, all these choices, they're value-laden choices. And what are these values? Reconciliation and harmony, gender equity after a fashion, valuing each individual and each individual's experience, rejecting colonialism, and they have some kind of universal basic income thing going on as well. What isn't there? There isn't religion, at least not in the crew. And this lack of religion continues in most of the iterations of the Star Trek franchise. So we have this really aspirational, utopian view that has some questionable situations in it, such as the Klingon portrayals in the original series involving some cultural appropriation, and other sort of situations that really reflect a male, white, heterosexual gaze. And so we can critique it, but what it does is it opens up space for a conversation that you might not otherwise have had, for conversations that challenge and clarify our values, and then give us more information about other people's experiences, give us more clarity about ways that we can do better in our own lives. And so Star Trek engages in this project of annunciation. Now, there's actual connections between Star Trek and a real future. In the late 1970s, NASA asked Nichelle Nichols to appear in a film. And she said, "And what are you going to do with it? Is this going to be a real thing? Are you really going to do the things that you need to do to nurture black women, black men in your organization?" And they convinced her that they would, and she did the film. And Bill Nilsson, who was a NASA administrator, said, "Nichelle made it her mission to inspire women and people of color to join this agency, to change the face of STEM, and to explore the cosmos." And one of the people that she inspired was Mae Jemison, who was the first African-American woman to go into space. She saw Lieutenant Uhura on the bridge of the Enterprise every week, and she was like, "I can do that." And when she was on the space shuttle Endeavour, she actually started each shift by saying, "Hailing frequencies open." She has since left the space program, but she continues to promote science, technology, and social change through her company, the Jemison Group. And she's also the first real astronaut to have appeared on a Star Trek episode. LeVar Burton invited her to appear on an episode that he directed. Now, I did watch Star Trek, the original series, as I was growing up, but I was a lot more interested in The Twilight Zone. This series originally aired between 1959 and 1964. And in 1/2 hour, I'd be carried away into what creator Rod Serling called another dimension, a dimension of time, of sound, of sight, a dimension of mind, a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. And his opening narration set the scene. He was like a Greek chorus, opening and closing the show. Kim Haysites writes, "This narrator provides the voice of very real emotions, giving space and place to public fears, to our naivete, the human condition, and our ability to harm ourselves and others." Picture this: Eye of the Beholder, in which a woman has just created plastic surgery. It's her last resort to look normal. If the surgery is unsuccessful, she'll be deported to a colony with others who look like her. The medical professionals unwind her bandages. They recoil in disgust. The camera falls on a blonde woman who very much conforms with conventional standards of beauty. The 1950s was a time of social repression and censorship in television. Serling heard the story of a brutal murder, that of a 14-year-old boy, Emmett Till, and the miscarriage of justice that occurred. The perpetrators were acquitted, and they told their story of how they did the murder in Look magazine. Now, Rod Serling was the shit. Everybody wanted him. He was a freelance writer. And he thought, well, what can I do? I'll write a screenplay. Everybody loves me. And he wrote a show. It was called Noon on Doomsday. It made it to TV screens. It wasn't the story he wanted to tell. He was weary from battles over the years, and this was one of them. And so when he started to do Twilight Zone, he told Mike Wallace, "I will no longer use scripts for social criticism. The Twilight Zone is simply entertainment." Now, he was able to slip his commentary in about prejudice, about authoritarianism, tolerance, and ethics, because as his wife said, they didn't understand what he was doing. They didn't understand his vision. The Twilight Zone queers life. It challenges you to question what you think you know. There's not a lot of enunciation going on, but it certainly helps us to see what oppression looks like. So it denunciates, and it shines a light on oppression. This trippy, queer place, the Twilight Zone. And speaking of trippy, Rod Serling encountered a young writer in San Diego one afternoon. He read a couple of stories, and then he went over to him, and he said, "Never let them stop you from telling the story you want to tell." That young man was J. Michael Straczynski, who created the 1990s series Babylon 5. Now, this was a groundbreaking television series. It departed from a monster of the week format. It had a 5-year story arc that was sketched out from the very beginning. Unlike Star Trek, these characters have religions. They practice them. They talk to each other about their religions. They also have money problems, including a homeless population on the space station. So Straczynski gives us a little bit grittier future. We have multi-dimensional characters. Every single one of the characters does something that harms others. Some of them do more harm than others. Every single one of the characters recognizes that they did harm, and they attempt to atone and repair the harm. And some of them are more successful than others. Take Jakar. His story arc takes him from an aggressive, bitter, reactive character. He wants to go, he's always trying to kill Londo Mollari. So there are basically, if you don't know the show, there's two alien races that have a history of colonialism between them. What does Jakar become? He becomes an empathetic, deeply grounded statesman who, at the end of the show, takes on a friendship with a bitter, angry woman, telling her, "Come with me, we'll go explore together, let's hang out." So Babylon 5 digs really deep into themes of meaning, grief, hubris, authoritarianism, relationships, and redemption, all the while maintaining a sense of humor and play. It annunciates as it denunciates. My final example is from Octavia Butler's book, Parable of the Sower. This explores our ability to heal in the face of harm. It's set in California in a maybe future that is frighteningly similar to our present. Society has mainly broken down. The narrator and protagonist, Lauren, a young black woman, lives in an enclave that gets violently overrun. She and two survivors begin a journey north to an area where they can start over. She gathers others to her in her journey. She has a hyper empathy, but she also has practical skills. She knows what's safe to eat. She knows how to prepare it and cultivate it. She can discern other people's gifts. She encourages them to lean into their gifts. So she practices shared leadership. And she leads her band to create a new vibrant community and a new religion, Earthseed, that she has discovered. This community's ritual includes a nightly gathering where anyone can speak and everyone else can also engage. They challenge, they question, they extend each other. It's a community of dreamers. In Lauren's Earthseed community, they are many, and they are one. Annunciation. These are but a few examples of how science fiction, fantasy, and speculative fiction operate in the space of dreams. It comes from the creative's culture and experiences. It gains power as it gets launched into the world, where people with different cultures and different experiences can join the game. And in this game, we do so many generative things. We lift mirrors to the world, depicting the story of what's happening and where we come from. We critique and challenge the world. We depict a different way of meaning. We imagine. What then would that be like? And what then? As we iteratively and joyfully reconstitute the world. Amen and blessed be.